Have you ever had a police officer approach you with way too much hostility because you're a trucker? Ever since I shed my business suit and stepped into my rig, I have noticed that police officers approach me often approach me way too aggressively out here on the road. So I've needed to learn how to manage the tone of these conversations, no matter what type of vibe the officer comes at me with. I figured I can't be the only one that has this issue with officers out here on the road. So here are my strategies that I use with officers that seem to always make the interaction a good one and almost always get me out of a ticket. Hi everybody, my name is EJ Anderson, the long haul truck blogger, also known as the happiest, kindest trucker on the road. Welcome to White Glove Trucking, my channel dedicated to helping you use trucking as a vehicle to live your best life. Now, part of living your best life out here on the road is not getting any tickets. But trucking is not like working in an office. You know, you're out and about all day, going up and down these roads, and I've just learned that you're just gonna have way more interactions with police officers. Now, most of them are cool, but I've had some instances where the officers seem to approach me way too aggressively. And a couple where it seems like the officer's actually trying to rile me up, trying to get a reaction out of me, as if he wanted an altercation. So I had to develop a technique to diffuse these situations. Something that keeps me calm no matter what, and ultimately lets me walk away ticket free. All right, so here's a situation. So I had just gone to Dairy Queen in Indiana. I parked on the side of the road, side of the highway, I guess. So as I'm coming out, an officer speeds around me, pulls up behind the truck. And so I see him and I start to kind of look like, oh, I'm being compliant. You know, I start to kind of walk faster. I hold up my bag, my Dairy Queen bag, like, hey, it's just me. That's my truck. I'm here. I just got food. I'm about to leave. I'm taking off. So I get up to him. I smile. I greet him courteously. Hey, how's it going, officer? He's like, do you think you can just park here? I was like, well, initially I thought that this was a truck stop right here, but I can see once I got here that it's really just a trailer sales place. But then you see the sign? I said, well, I had seen the sign, but I didn't want to say, hey, I saw the sign and I still parked here, the no parking sign. And I also didn't want to lie and say I didn't see the sign. So I just apologized. I was like, you know, I'm so sorry, officer. He's like, but didn't you see the sign, the no parking sign? He was getting more and more heated. He kept asking this. So I said, you know, I'm really sorry, officer. He asked again, but didn't you see the sign? I was like, I realized something was up at this point. I'm like, he keeps asking me the same questions. I've given him an apology. I've told him the situation. It's like he wants to have an argument about this. And so I just was like, you know, like I got nothing, you know, like, I'm sorry. And so after that third heated time of asking me, it's like a light switch just went off. He just switched the switch and he was like, well, all nice and calm. Alrighty, well, then I'll help you get back into traffic, safely back into traffic. And that's when I realized that was all a game. Like, it was intentional, trying to get some kind of reaction out of me, right? And that interaction is how I came up with these strategies on how to diffuse a situation where the police officers is basically intentionally trying to rile you up. Step number 1, prepare your mind. Do you want to be right, or do you want the officer not to start writing? The first step is to get your mind right. You know, I smiled and approached the officer courteously, only to be met with hostility and aggressive questioning. And you know, that's not the first time that's happened. I remember once when I was at the beach, I was riding my bike on the boardwalk. It was early in the morning, nobody else out. And an officer is approaching me on his bike. And he comes to me, and as he's getting to me, I smile. Oh, good morning, officer. Good morning. And he says, get on the street where you belong. And I'm thinking, gosh, I just gave him the most courteous greeting. And that's the response I'm going to get. Now, you all know it's something about when you greet somebody kindly and politely and respectfully, and they give you some like hostility in return. It's just human nature to have like anger and resentment after that. And it's so hard to control this initial reaction if you're not prepared for it. If you're surprised, there's really nothing you can do. You're just gonna react instinctively, and you're gonna end up doing something that's not in your best interest. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Now imagine you're playing football, and the other team has a player who is known for trash talking, egging people on, all to get the players from the opposing team to lash out and then get a penalty. But if you're prepared for this guy, you are much less likely to fall into his trap. And when you're just smiling back at him because you know exactly what he's trying to do, then deep down inside, you feel like you're winning no matter what he says. That smug feeling of winning no matter what can carry you through the game without getting you in the penalty box. Or in our case, without getting you in the prison box. Now, I know it's kind of sad. We got to do all this mental work in preparation for an interaction with someone who is supposedly there to protect and serve us. But I guess that's just the world we live in, I guess. Now, I told this same story to a white retired female officer. And she was just like, I think it was because of racism. I was surprised at her honesty. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because we are not going to let that affect our strategy. We don't care about the officer's motives. We want to stay out of the trap. We want to win. The moment you begin to play out any stories like that in your mind, it's because I'm this. It's because he's that. You have lost your focus and let down your defenses. Okay, now that we are ready to stay calm no matter what, let's go on to step number 2, which is ignore whatever they say. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, did I hear him right? He said ignore the cop? Didn't you say you're trying to keep me out of the prison box? Well, now when I say ignore, it's not like the kind of cold shoulder ignoring. It's actually quite the opposite. If an officer approaches me in a less than courteous manner, I first ignore their tone and whatever their request is. And I respond by giving them a polite greeting in a calm and quiet voice. Hello, officer. How are you today? Most of the time, there's like this little pause, as if they're seeing you for the first time. Now, this works because it gives them that chance to pause, to see you as a person, and it reminds them of the courtesies that they failed to extend to you. Sometimes not all, but this makes them feel a little bit ashamed, and then they're nicer after that. Now, just do this, whatever they say. License and registration, please. Didn't you see that sign? You know how fast you were going? You think you can just park here? Oh, hello, officer. How are you today? My registration, you say. Let me get that for you. Okay, just try it. It will work, trust me. All right, now we have remain calm. We've ignored the officer's bad vibe and extended our polite courtesies to them. Now we can get on to the third and final step. The step number 3 is just apologize, apologize, apologize. Do you want to be right? Or do you want the officer not to be reading you your rights? So step number 3 is just to apologize and keep apologizing. When the officer first asked me, didn't you see the sign? My first instinct was to think of an excuse or reason, which I kind of did in the beginning before I realized what he was trying to do. But once I saw what he was really trying to do was just argue with me, then I had to change tactics. Because to defend is often to disagree. And any type of disagreeing or arguing, no matter how calmly and intelligently we can manage it, we want to avoid that. That's what he wants, so that's what we want to avoid. Remember that retired female officer? She said that many of those in law enforcement are drawn to it because they like to exert control. They like to be in control. So if the officer's primary objective is to exert control over you, then arguing with them, no matter how intelligent you can do it, will only further antagonize them. You may have just proved yourself right, but now that desire for control is unmet, and maybe it's even intensified now. So they would just continue to search. And lo and behold, now they done found something wrong with your truck. So once I realized what he was trying to do, I just kept apologizing. Didn't you see the no parking sign? Gosh, officer, I'm really sorry about that. But didn't you see the no parking sign? Gosh, I'm really sorry for parking here, officer. But didn't you see the no parking sign? That's, it was all a game. And hopefully these strategies will help you win that game. Now, of course, not all police officers are like this. But if you assume that they are, and you assume that they have that desire for control, then you'll be prepared in the worst case scenario. Good luck and happy trucking.